We're talking about The Inspection, which is opening in theaters in limited release today. But it's coming in with a lot of buzz because it has been nominated for a bunch of Spirit Awards, a bunch of Gotham Awards. It's very much worth your time, and Alonso will describe it for you.
To be a good Marine means to know thyself and seek self-improvement. That means you, damn it!
Aye, sir! Yeah, so this is the narrative debut of documentary filmmaker Elegance Bratton. He wrote and directed. This is a at least semi-autobiographical story. Jeremy Pope stars as a young, gay, unhoused person who is trying to better his situation. His mother, played by Gabrielle Union, has completely cut him off. And so he decides he's going to join the Marines. And it is one of those movies about basic training and how it breaks you and how it maybe turns you into something else. And, you know, this is set during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era, you know, when, you know, we're at war overseas and it was like in the 2000s, right?
2005, I want to say.
Yeah. And so, you know, it just dealing with trying to remain closeted in this very like kind of gung-ho and, you know, all male atmosphere, and what, you know, people maybe know about him, but decide not to talk about him, but nonetheless, how his fellow soldiers treat him, how he is treated by his drill sergeant, played by Bokeem Woodbine. Raul Castillo is another one of the trainers who seems to be a little more compassionate. It kind of follows the steps of a sort of Officer and a Gentleman, or one of those sort of World War II movies about how, like, you know, the military will make a man out of you. But I think it also asks some harder questions about what does that process entail and what do you come out of it looking like?
I found that fascinating too, because it sort of hits the notes and goes through the processes that we have seen so many times, whether it's, you know, from Stripes to Full Metal Jacket, you know, yes. A wide variety of different kinds of films that depict the breaking down and building back up process that occurs when you are a recruit in the military. And because this is his own story in a lot of ways, you know, he was indeed a Marine for several years, Elegance Bratton. There are some really fascinating, tangible and very specific details that feel very lived in that I had not seen elsewhere, in terms of the language, in terms of the specific ordeals and rituals that they must go through. I found that the sense of place was quite enthralling. Like I felt like I was a part of things here. And the ways in which the other men around him either accept him or really violently don't, you know, that felt quite visceral and sometimes shocking in both directions, like who is kind to him and who is not. And he in turn finds his place by connecting with other people who are similarly an outsider. Mm-hmm. Like he's got this magical thing in him that allows him to connect with, to like recognize in other people that same sense of like isolation and not belonging. And despite the rejection he has suffered and the hardship he has suffered, there is still this kindness in him. Gabrielle Union is amazing in this.
So good.
Never seen her do anything like this at all, and did not even realize it was her at first. Like I had to go look at IMDb. I'm like, holy shit, that's Gabrielle Union, because she's totally stripped down as his chain-smoking New Jersey prison guard mother. And the complicated nature of that relationship is like fascinating and heartbreaking. And Jeremy Pope is fantastic in this too, because he has to present various versions of himself to the world depending on who he is talking to. And that evolves over time as, you know, the process is supposed to break you down and build you back up again, but it kind of like fortified him into who he already was.
Yes, definitely. And he's one of those actors that like can really sort of really hold a close up, and there's so much physicality required from him. Like I would love to see him in a Claire Denis movie. Like I think, you know, he's just somebody who fully inhabits this character, and you see this transformation and so much of, even when he's not speaking, like he's just radiating all these different things that you're able to read into the performance. I find this really intense. I've seen Elegance's documentaries. We screened Peer Kids at Outfest, but this is such an assured fiction debut from him. I'm really excited to see what he does next.
And Raul Castillo is always good too.
Always, yes.
Always. He's a fascinating, magnetic screen presence. He can play every kind of role. And here he kind of has to keep you guessing as to
his motivations,
who he is and what he wants. And I'm also fascinated by once they go through their basic training, right? And they pass their final inspection, like the facade drops, right? Like the whole intimidation of it and the lack of acceptance of it. And they acknowledge, of course, like we have seen people like this come through forever. And it's like they acknowledge that they're going through the motions. They acknowledge that it's all theater. And that I thought was fascinating too, because it kind of pokes a hole in the notion of like, this matters and this is true and there's integrity to it. It's like, no, we're all just sort of, playing our roles.
We just got to get you to the finish line. And then after that, we can exhale,
Yeah. The candor of that I had not seen before. And I found that really interesting. So it's not in any way propaganda for the military, but I get the sense that Elegance Bratton really owes a debt of gratitude for his experience here. Like he's critical of it, but it's not a complete indictment of what he went through.
It's not like kind of a bitter, this horrible thing. Like I think I haven't read interviews with him about it, but I would imagine that he takes a very balanced point of view here, and it's not all bad, it's not all great, and I think he wouldn't have made the movie if this weren't a formative experience in his own life.
The only criticism I have of this is that he is totally awesome at all times. Like he always says the right thing. He does the right thing. He's kind to everyone always. Even when he like breaks the rules, it's for the right reason. So that's the only thing, is that maybe he's very kind to himself in this process.
That didn't stand out to be so much, just because like I think for a lot of times for gay guys who are in hostile territory, this is an actual thing that they refer to, the best little boy in the world. The idea that if I make straight A's, or if I'm a really good athlete, or if I am accommodating to other people, then it will be okay.
I see.
And they won't hate me for this thing that they would otherwise hate me for.
I see.
So I thought that was baked into the character, that he would, particularly in this sort of hostile environment, would go out of his way to always be kind of accommodating.
That's an interesting point. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, that's like a survival mechanism for him.
Exactly.
That's really thoughtful. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm saying 8.5. This is very good and very worth seeing. I said
9.2, one of my favorite films of the year.
Oh, great.
And really, I mean, also, by the way, I want to mention the cinematography by Lachlan Milne. This is, he's having to make a basic training movie. We've seen a million basic training movies, and this one somehow looks different.
Yeah, there's an intimacy to it.
Yeah.
I don't want to say a softness, because what they go through is very difficult.
Right. But the quality of like the light and the composition of the shots, it doesn't feel like, again, like I think the specter of Full Metal Jacket hangs heavy on any movie that's attempting this sort of thing, and he finds a way through to do it in a different way.
Right. So it's A24. It's in theaters. Maybe it'll stream someday. But
I think it's in limited release this weekend, and then it'll be opening wider later in the month. And it'll either be near you at awards time, or it'll probably be streaming at some point. So keep an eye out for the inspection.